It is hot in here. I had full intentions to wear my blazer, layer it up, but it's summertime. It's beautiful outside, and like a true nerd, I'm hanging out. Look outside though. Anyways, speaking of nerds, just kidding. I have Matt from CareCru across the whole country. He's like on. He can see water, but it's like a totally different set of water. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good, thanks. So yeah, up here in Nova Scotia, so on the Atlantic coast, I'm literally 30-second drive from the Atlantic Ocean. So we're also having a really hot summer day, which is odd for Nova Scotia by the ocean, but it's Friday afternoon. We'll take that in my
And,
end.
yeah, and you're like in the future right now. We were just talking about that. How like you can see the score on hockey games before everyone else, right?
Yeah, the secret I made with lotto ticket numbers and everything in advance is definitely where I made my first mark in the
What
industry.
are we doing here? We should be figuring that out. Um, Matt, why don't we start off? Let's hear a little bit about who you are, your background, specifically your dental background, and also a little plug. You used to run a podcast as well. Is that right?
I did. I had my sort of side hobby is health and fitness. It was never like a full-time job. It was more so just a passion of mine. A lot of family health issues over the years, diabetes, cancer, lost my dad to cancer. So when I see my health now, it's like if I can do anything to prevent any of those things from happening to me, I can be okay with that. Because that short sucks. But at the end of the day, if I've put in the work, if I've done the education, if I've tried to help myself, it's got me to really good places. So a friend of mine had a podcast that I was a guest on during some of my fitness days, and then it turned into why don't we co-host this? And 100 episodes later, we met some pretty cool people. Got to travel Indianapolis, connect with him in person. It just opened up my eyes to a larger scale of what the fitness industry is compared to just little small town Nova Scotia where I am. So yeah, it's been about a year or so. So Marc and I were just talking is that maybe I'll revive that. Haven't been on a podcast in a while, so we'll see. So that's the podcast background of me. The dental side of things. So my background right now is I have about 10 years of clinic experience. So I spent some years managing clinics on the operations side, the business side. So I've bounced between two different sort of roles with that. Is that my friend of mine, we started the clinic from scratch back in 2013. He was a dentist. I had some business background, bought land, built the building, brought things up, and started from scratch. So to go into an industry I knew nothing about and build that to the place of where it is now, almost celebrating 10 years. That was my first sort of intro to the industry and just a business in general. And then I got out of the industry for a couple of years, but then like everyone in this industry, they get sucked back in. So I walked into a completely different scenario. My local dentist that I went to as a child, been open 25 plus years. COVID happened, turnover, looking to revitalize things. So had some conversations with them. I had actually lost my position outside of the dental industry during COVID with layoffs, and sort of went in just as a sort of a bit of a consulting role. And then it turned into, okay, let's add in some more full time, became operations manager and helped take a practice that did everything 25 years ago, still the way they were doing it 2 years ago, paper charting, nothing digital, to revitalizing that, to getting them to that stage. So that was sort of my first insight to say, okay, going from old school dentistry into the technological side of things is I spent a few years there
Let's. I
before,
want to. I want to stop you there.
yeah,
That is. That's an interesting discussion there. Like, let's hear a little bit more about that. Like, how did you stick handle that?
the second location.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's tricky because literally walking in to a practice that, again, husband and wife owned it. Hygienist that was there was still there when I was five, like had been there the whole time. Walking into a system where I had only known new, shiny digital from my first experience because we started 10 years ago when the digital craze was starting to take off. So we had no paper charts, we had no filing cabinets. So walking in thinking, okay, I'm going to like revitalize this. I'm going to take these guys to the next level. I'm going to rebuild this brand. to find immediately that you have tenured employees who do not want to change the way that they've been doing things for the last 25 years. You have people who are almost ready to get out. You have people who are scared of change, which is also something I'm seeing a ton of right now with my new role. So what was supposed to be a several month project to just simply launch digital charting for a practice. So they had digital scheduling, but everything was paper chart where we would pull 80 to 100 charts a night. If you lose a patient's chart, what do? You don't have medical history, you don't have history. We would spend 2 to 3 hours a day just looking for charts and thinking, okay, this will be smooth. We'll roll them over. I will do the training with the PMS software. I will spearhead this so ownership doesn't need to have that hassle. And 6 months in, just the resistance and the struggle and seeing the difficulty to say, when do we find time to do this? What is the right aspect of saying, okay, Marc's brand new today. Do we start him with a digital copy, or do we still go old school and then one day flick the switch to everything? So we tried a few different approaches, and that was the biggest challenge I had, besides opening the doors day one of the first clinic, was having that buy-in and making sure that they understand there's going to be glitches and ways that just don't work the way they used to. And there's going to be some back and forth where I'm looking at Marc's chart for probably the next 2 or 3 visits while I'm updating it, while also trying to understand on the fly, how do I chart perio? How do I do all these things efficiently when I don't know how to do it? So it was that was sort of the biggest issue, dealing on top of trying to recuperate 6 to 8 months of closed clinics because of COVID. So that backlog is that there was no time. We had to make every dollar count, every minute count, every unit. That trying to carve out time and get the buy-in on everything is that definitely the biggest struggle I had, was just thinking, okay, no, this is me, this is my role, I'll get this done. And then making sure that I was empathetic to both the clinical side of teams, the admin side, me reporting to ownership directly. So in between, as that sort of operations role, is that I had to wear all these different hats, thinking like, I can do this, I'll put in the work, because that was my job, was to come in and do this, where at the end of the day, that was secondary to especially the clinical team. So credit to them for putting up with me to get them to that stage. But man, was that different, that my chart in 2021 was the same chart that I filled out when I busted a tooth in 1990. So wild. That was so that definitely wild. So that was sort of the latest clinic example that I was in a couple of years back.
Yeah, and then now since then you're in CareCru. What's your experience been there so far?
Yeah, so I joined CareCru about 1.5 years ago. So for those who don't know, CareCru is sort of one of the automated recall patient engagement, sort of all-in-one add-on to your PMS to be able to sort of maximize efficiency at many different levels of the practice, whether that's ownership, admin, clinical, analytics, those type of things. So that is what the actual platform is all about. So transitioning into this role as sort of a dual purpose, as one, sort of onboarding and implementing this software to different clinics, and also this, we call it practice success, is going into these practices and evaluating, using my experience to see, okay, different reporting, different ways that you schedule, different ways that you interact with your patients or recruit new patients. What are those like? And I can not only help you implement the system, but provide my experience to say, you know what, I've been there, I've seen that, I've scheduled it this way, I've answered that phone. So that's sort of my role. So it's about going into the tech world of dentistry, which I thought would be 80% dentistry, 20% tech. It's the opposite. The skill set that I've had to learn on the technical side of things, man, was that scary. But the experience I have had in the last year, being very siloed in Nova Scotia, working in 2 fairly rural clinics, is that I had my idea of what the dental industry was for Nova Scotia. Now going multinational and working from coast to coast, working in the US with some of these clinics to see, you know what, I ran 10 ops sort of at peak of some of my practice days, to see these guys who are running 20 ops a day, 20,000 patients. And it's like, they were doing things that I wished I could have done. And some of the things I say, you know what, we could never do this, or you know what, I thought of that first. Like, well, these are people that are doing that. So it's given me a new appreciation that if I went back into the clinic world right now, I would be 10 times the manager I was, because I have a different viewpoint of how technology can play that role. I know the challenges from the technical side, also into the actual clinical side. So So it's been a really fun journey, to be honest with you. The last year or so is that, again, I feel like I can impact 100 clinics in a month compared to just helping my clinic. So when you roll into a practice in Prince Edward Island who has never used automation, that has a busy practice calling 100 patients simply to remind them of an appointment, to say, I will teach you how to let automation do this, but also make sure that they understand that they can trust the system. Like
Yes. Yeah.
let the mundane do what it needs to do. You can still call Mark, Matt, if that person wants that personal touch.
Yeah.
But 80% of the people do not want that phone call. They
Yeah.
don't want the back and forth. They want to be able to click see, click confirm, and confirm that, and to be able to free up that time.
Right.
Like going back to that other clinic where we were literally did paper charts. That's what I kind of related to. It's that you free up the tasks that the automation can do, where you do not lose a second of that personal touch that a lot of people want to
Right.
still provide to their patients.
Yeah, let's touch on that. So like obviously change, right? Change, it's always going to be a challenge, especially, you know, you're switching over a clinic that's been, you know, this is how we do things. This is just how we do things. Now from, you know, the patient perspective, how does that change going from paper to digital for the patient? You know, the more frictionless you can make that process, it just becomes a better experience right off the get-go. You know, what do you like? What would you say to that perspective? Like as a, you know, hey team, you know, this is going to be a challenge. This is going to be a big change, but the patients are going to like this better. Would you agree with that?
Well, 100%, especially today's dynamic of that patient, is if that you give them the option. That's what I like to remind these clinics, is that you can still have that personal touch. I take it back to my first clinic 10 years ago. As we were building the clinic, there was no automation system. I had a green flip phone as we were building the building. And when someone called, I had a spreadsheet or a piece of paper where I'd write down Mark's information, schedule it in once I figured that out. And we built those relationships, especially with that core, say, first several hundred patients, where we are just about to celebrate. They are just about to celebrate 10 years. And I was out there for my own recall the other day. And those patients were still asking about, oh, what's Matt doing? Like, how's Matt? It's like, I love that aspect of still having that time for that personalized relationship, building that business, because I want to know what's going on in Mark's life. Yes, there are some patients who want to come to the dentist, get it done, and get out. You'll always have those patients, but there's some people who want that community aspect. They want to know that, okay, I know this information. I can have that conversation with you, but it doesn't need to be, hey, Matt, please confirm your appointment, like playing phone tag. So from the patient point of view, that you can offer the automated systems in regards to reminders, in regards to recalls. Online booking right now is something that we pride ourselves in with our platform, is that you can send somebody a message with a live link to your schedule. They can request an appointment and you can accept it without needing to talk to a patient. They can request it at 3 o'clock in the morning and that schedule is as accurate as it is if you are open. A lot of people want that. They do not want to answer the phone. So from that point of view, I always go into these clinics, first of all, remind them, okay, I've been in your shoes. So instantly you get a little bit of that trust to say, okay, he knows what I'm talking about. He knows those issues that we come up with, but also remind them not only what it can do, but how it works. Because the biggest thing with technology from practices which think they are ruining the patient experience or hindering it is that if something goes wrong, they assume it's broken and then they lose trust in it instantly. So I want to make sure that the practice knows from the patient point of view that I want you to see how you do it, but also what's going on behind the scenes in a generalized level. So you know, oh, you know what? This is wrong because of this. Or Matt wasn't supposed to get a message. Oh, this is right because we have to do this. So there are some kinks in the armor where people need to still adapt it. It's not perfect. It doesn't read everything within a PMS. It does not. Technology is not going to replace you, but it's going to free
that was
up
my next
so
question.
much
Like,
time.
Is there a big fear out there for that? Like, are these folks scared that they're going to be losing their jobs? Is that like a common feeling amongst software?
I wouldn't say fear of losing their job that I've come across. It is something that comes up where there's those jokes, of course, where you say, oh, you know what, then I won't need to do this. And maybe there is a little bit of truth to that. Maybe the efficiency of recall systems starts to eliminate necessarily just a scheduling coordinator role in a smaller style clinic. in these behemoths, of course, there's always room for both. But so maybe there is some fear with that. The number one fear is that they don't want to change and they think that they are going to screw something up, which then the doctor's going to find out and then it trickles down to them.
Yeah,
So
like that's kind of like my thoughts too, is maybe they're afraid of like it's going to expose that they're not doing their job, or you know what I mean, like their value is going to be diminished in the practice because they've built this system, they're super proud of this system, and along comes this software to just kind of eliminate their work that they've put together over the years too.
The number one thing I see, and I've just feared this myself, is that we do a lot of course, verification when we first connect during training to make sure data is correct and make sure things are syncing through. We go through a specific criteria to not only verify, say, due dates for patients, but also it's a recall percentage number of your due late is what we call it. So, Marc, do you have a 25% due late over the last 2 years? Does that seem accurate? Or 17% or 30%? I would say 8 out of 10 have no idea if that number is accurate. And I think part of it is they either just don't know because they don't understand the complexity of some PMSs when it comes to reporting, or they're scared to admit that, you know what, my due late is 39%.
Yeah.
I'll tell them, like mine was probably at 70% at one point, is that this is to open up your eyes in a very user-friendly approach where, again, we can show you, like, listen, guys, here is what we're looking at. Here are some tools that are going to help you with this. And here are some easy metrics where, you know what, you can follow it month by month. Here's some, and that's where I like to come in, where I never like to tell people, okay, this is what you have to do with the system. I want to tell them this is how it works, but I love it when a practice will say, okay, Matt, what would you do here?
Right.
So I always make sure they approach me. I never want to say, you have to do this, you have to use this feature. Because no, it's not for everybody with each feature. But man, I've got into some of these conversations where it should be 2 hours of training over the course of a few days, and I'm 5 hours in because I'm loving the conversation with these people.
Yeah, that's cool.
They'll say something and it's like, you know what, I never thought of that. So if I can show them something and then they teach me something, I make sure I recognize that as well.
Yeah.
Is that at the end of the day, that's how we're going to get better. Dental tech companies, which I learned from my clinic days to where I am now, need to do a better job overall of explaining how to use the system, what it's supposed to do, and supporting it from the dental practice point of view.
Yeah.
To just implement 50 practices today, sure, that's what a lot of people want when it comes to business. Yes, that's what I want too. But no, I'm not turning something live on a practice who is not ready for it because you've lost that trust the minute something goes wrong.
Totally. I think, you know, dental tech companies get excited about their offering and its capabilities and what it could bring in terms of value to that practice. And you're right. I think we need to listen more, you know, like especially, you know, a system like CareCru that's super customizable. It's almost in our best interest to listen to what their needs are, their apprehensions, and deal with it from sort of the inside out, you know?
Right. And I'm sure some of the conversations that I have with practices, or if I'll deter someone from doing something or activating something, I'm sure when my team is listening to this, like, hey, Matt, we shouldn't do that. It's like, you know what? I literally, yes, I need to support the business and I believe in the product. I really do. I wish I had it when I was in my days, but there's some things that just don't work. There's some complexities, especially with scheduling, that just do not work where it's going to make the practice more efficient.
Right.
There are ways that this could make this more headache, more stress on the front team. So again, like you said, listening is that I like to ask those questions and I want those people to open up. And that's why I appreciate we get several hours typically to bring on a new practice to say, hey guys, what is an issue? Why are you coming to CareCru? And then I can have those conversations. So yeah, no, that's the biggest qual I have right now.
It's a tool, right? And at the end, in the hands of the people. So it's for everyone's best interest that, you know, they're going to be able to use that tool to the fullest extent of the capacity that they're going to use it for. I mean, like with CareCru, like, my goodness, it's probably one of the most complex software sets, I would argue, on the market today. So it would be, you know, solid amount of time invested in learning how to use that software to its full capacity. So, you know, training and support is everything, is where I started getting to.
No, for sure. And that's why we try to implement this sort of, we call them check-ins, where after 6 weeks, 6 months, it's like, let's check in. How's the practice doing? If they're not using a feature because they were scared of it of day one, they're not going to go back to that 3 weeks in or 3 months in. They're going to wait till we have those conversations. When we release a new feature, you'll get articles, you'll get videos. It's great. But no, people want to hear and have the conversation. How will it work for me?
Yes.
What is this doing? So the three things that I think the whole industry needs to do better when it comes to implementing technology into the office is, one, include more front end staff on the decision. I will get a doctor who makes a decision, who will have a PM implement that, and then will not involve the front end team. And then all of a sudden the front end team is getting 15 messages on day one because they don't know what's going on. So there's that breakdown of communication that either something is not forced on them, but they think that, oh, you know what, I love the analytics portion. Let's make my front end team switch from what they're doing without giving them proper knowledge. So I encourage doctors and PMs, include your front end teams. These are the lifeblood of your schedule. If they do not understand it, or they do understand it, when I see a practice say, you know what, we filled 8 people from our short notice wait list this week, and they only had to send one message versus going into the PMS and calling 8 people individually. Man, I love those check-in calls when I see people utilizing it.
Yeah.
When they say, Matt, like we have this feature. Oh, I had no idea. It's never like, what do you mean you had no idea? I trained you on that. You get 2 hours with me to learn, and the stack is like to learn 15 features, and one of those hours is configuration. I'm not expecting you to understand that. So that's where like my role is that I'm trying to condense these calls and these trainings to be as efficient as possible, because practices again will say, hey, so-and-so, go take this 1 hour training call on your lunch while answering the phone or checking out patients.
Yeah.
Let there be adequate time for people to actually learn this. And then you're going to see tenfold. If that means not scheduling something for 6 weeks because you want to block off appropriate time, do that. Like that is what I would encourage, because I've been on both sides. Is that I've been there too, where I've learned the pre-call system that I use in the office, is that I was doing a webinar while trying to help people out. It's like, that wasn't efficient. And now I see what the tech industry can do. Man, I wish I had this, or took time to learn something like this during those days.
Yeah. No, that's the exciting part about it. And man, oh man, like team buy-in, like if you're going to bite the bullet and invest in a software like this, exactly. You got to schedule that. You got to make sure that your team is all going to buy into this new system, and spend the time that they need to get it there. I mean, listen, we're in the day and age now that if you're not running a software like this, you're going to be missing out. Like that's kind of where we're at. We go back to communication, getting a text message versus a phone call. Like, Matt, I don't know about you, but what percentage of your communication is, actual phone call anymore? It's, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So
like for that to hang up and then send an email like, hey, Mark, you gave me a call. What can I help you with? And that's on my end too. I'll take blame for that. If someone calls me directly from a practice, I want to know what the issue is before you call me. So I'm not caught off guard, or maybe I can solve that for you right away. It's like, oops, I was in a meeting. Can you just sort of summarize what you need and I'll give you a call back, so I can solve the issue, or at least have context to that. And it's, and like, that's where the same thing, going back to that, is that little settings, not only just how to use it, but for example, if there's a default setting that recall messages go out at 5 p.m. every day, what if your practice closes at 4 every day and your message is telling a patient to call them? Something as small as that could turn over. If I get a message that says, call me, and then I call within 5-10 minutes and no one answers, I'm not calling back.
No,
I'm going somewhere else that will. So those are those little things that people need to embrace this technology. Like you said, you're behind the times if you are not utilizing something or actively pursuing to use what you have better than you are right now. Ask the question, can I get a training call? People are not going to say, oh, you know what, I'm not going to give you a training call. You got your training call. Of course they're going to support you, because they want to provide the best support they can for the product. So I'm not going to turn down a training call for someone. Sure, it may not be scheduled right away, but let's make sure that technology companies as well, that you are supporting your practices, not just as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that, you know what, I want to know something about each practice that I can go in and help them with. Yeah. Because that is something that they need to do. I think everyone needs to do a better job of, from our point of view, from the practice point of view, at all levels.
Yeah, I agree. It just all boils down to just that know-how and the knowledge to do it, and getting past apprehension, adjusting to change. Totally. I was going to say something. It just completely, don't you hate that? Just like it's there, but it just, so let's talk about like running into a situation where it just doesn't work for that particular practice. Have you seen that? Like where it just things kind of just fall apart because there's no buy-in and,
that's, you know where,
I
mean? There is, you get those things again, especially with those offices that those front end teams who have people who are not told in advance or not included in this decision. And all of a sudden this is going to happen. So you have your defense, they have their defense up right away, and you pick up that tone within 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Where they say, yep, or you ask them to do a simple task as homework because I want to engage them, is that I don't want to just do everything for you. I want you to actually, after a training call, I say, okay, here's 5 things I want you to do before next call. And you know those ones that do, or they ask questions or send into support. So that is, and there's some things where just like I said before, the workflow just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Whether that's our system or that's any system, is that, of course, all of these competitors that we have, we all do something really well. We seem to think we do a lot of things well, but of course, there's flaws in our system.
Everybody's stuff is the best, right?
Everybody's stuff. So that's where, again, I take the dental background into the tech industry and say, guys, this feature, new, shiny, amazing, useless to a practice, to be honest with you. We've had so many of those, is that I'll say, remember in November 2022 when I said this and this and this and this, and they're like, did you say that? It's like, yes, I did. It's like, let's do this. Mm-hmm. Fix what we do well. Make sure it is seamless, where there are no issues, that it is user error and not our error. And then new features, consult the people on your team that have background in the industry or have more than just, I've been on my share of calls. We have a dentist who is one of our developers, like just the mindset and the brain behind her. And shout out to Radhika, if you're listening to this at some point, it's amazing that we have someone who has the skill to build it, but also understands it. And she can fire me a message. Sure, everything I say is not the holy grail and we're not going to implement it. Mm-hmm. But when I say something, my team, I hope, is listening. And credit to my team, they do. And I understand that I say, why can't we just do this? It should be easy. Pull this field. And they're like, it's not that easy. It's like, I need to understand better as well, that it's not, change the color of this.
Just code it, man. Just code it.
Just code it. And then I see the code. I see the code. Someone will ask me, like, what was the CPU? I have no idea. I'll just deal with it. So there are times where it doesn't work for someone. I use the word workaround quite a bit on calls, which again, I'm sure my team doesn't love, because they're just certain workflows that you need workarounds for. Mm-hmm. Is that if I can still make it work for you somehow, and it's not the intended purpose, it's still better than not using it. And it's not saying that our system is wrong or their workflow is wrong. Again, some of these things that I see are genius from these practices or from these admin teams to say, man, I wish that, again, I knew about this 5-10 years ago, because it is amazing what these humans can do alongside of automation.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So there definitely is somewhere. Very rarely will there be something where the whole thing doesn't work. And of course, it's just not for us, or we want something a little bit more scaled down, because the overwhelming amount of features sometimes does scare people away. So there are different packages that people will use. But at the same time, too, is that financially feasible, financially smart for these people to have something this powerful when maybe something inside a PMS can do the job. So, of course, we don't want to force something on a practice that doesn't need it, or just isn't ever going to buy in, or some practices that you just know if the color looks a little bit too bright one day, that you're getting a support ticket to say, right, tone it down. It's like, that's not us. Or like, why did you not start CareCru when I started up? Because it's web-based. Like, it's like these little things that they know, but if they can poke at it, or like, my Wi-Fi is slow. It's like, that's not CareCru's problem. Yeah. But you have to spin it and be like, that's unfortunate. And then you go through troubleshooting on how to fix Wi-Fi. Yeah. I've been on more calls where I'm setting like audio settings for practices. And the other thing I know I'll have an issue is when connecting for that first Zoom call or Teams call, and they cannot connect when it comes to a microphone, or do you have a phone? Do you know how to call in? And they can't. Yeah. It's like, okay, this is the practice. I need to say, okay, click here.
That's when Matt goes, you get put on Enya in the background. It's just all calm. Bring yourself down.
Yeah. So it's, and again, I need to remember that most office computers are not built up with the setup of me with 3 screens, a microphone.
You have the benefit of being on the front line, though. You get what they're what they're facing, and that's what it's all about. We're not doing this for us. We're doing this for their benefit. So it's in our best interest to listen to what their needs are. Or it's not going to work. So somebody, a team out there, a clinic is interested in finding like some sort of recall software or an accompanying data software that runs alongside their PMS, how should they go about finding that, like, successfully, from being a team, being on board to then implementation?
Yeah, so whether you're looking for something as like anything, I'm not going to say just CareCru specifically, but if your team is looking for some type of growth, is that of course you need to do the research. You need to reach out to people like Marc, to people who understand more so than just a nuance. This is the one to go with, and have calls. Take the time for that's where leadership and management need to have those calls where they can start to weed those out and narrow things down to say, okay, our main issue right now is we need to focus on recalls, or maybe reviews, or maybe we really like an online scheduling tool. Who offers these services? Do we need all of them? Do we need some of them? So you need to start that sort of background to say, okay, what is going to work for us? From there, then again, you need to take the time to meet with these people. Find out, what is that like? What is the onboarding scenario like? Do we get training? Do we get support after the fact? Do you have people at your team who understand the industry? That's why I like to tell people right away, is that we have people who actually were in the industry. Is that I think that's a leg up to some of competitors who don't. Is that there's nothing wrong with, there's some skilled people on our team who have never been in a clinic and you would have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But there are still some things that's where I can bring added value to say, you know what, Matt gets this, or I can tell Matt about this scenario and he can
Perspective.
probably,
Yeah,
perspective
perspective is huge.
Point of view. So that aspect, again, reaching out, what is that process like? So for example, with us, is that once you go through the whole demo process, sales process, is that we go through a full onboarding process. So my main role is as onboarding manager is we do 3 different calls. We do a configuration call where we go in and we validate all of the settings. We make sure data comes through. We also then set up the automation. So recalls, reminders, online booking, reviews. I teach you what it can do. We customize it to your practice. That's what I love, is that all of our features can customize frequency, timing, duration, all of these things. And then we do a separate call where we actually just train. We just do the features. So I don't like to combine them. It's like, let's go through the nuts and bolts, but bring your team with us. We also have an online e-learning platform that we offer to the practices before they even come on with me, is that they can do self-paced every module. So they understand the visual, they understand what to expect, and they can ask questions. Once you go through those first couple of calls, we then would go live with the practice, whether that's all the features right away, or sometimes we'll start with a small amount and say, okay, let's start with recalls and reminders, and let's build that trust, let's build that knowledge. And then I meet with every practice 2 weeks after they have that initial go live. And then that way we review it. Okay, how are things going? What do we want to tweak? What have you noticed? And then again, that consistent ongoing basis is always having support available, which we do, which I really like, but also still being connected to me to say, if there's a bigger picture item, yeah, Matt's on calls 4 to 6 hours a day. But if I have a bigger picture scenario, then I'll connect with somebody and sort of build on that. So I would recommend, if you're only using your PMS right now and you're at that stage where you feel your front team especially feel overwhelmed with the amount of work when it comes to just phone tag or reminder, or things are just segmented in too many places, connect with Marc to reach out to us, connect with our team directly with some contact information, or any of these customers or these companies. Is that, again, there is a fit for somebody everywhere, and somebody needs to at least explore that, because it is going to, after you get over that fear of something new and change, it's seamless, is that you don't need to do a lot of these things.
Yeah, it's a lot less. It's not a big spaghetti monster. It's not as scary as people maybe portray it to be. What's the timeline? What does that look like from implementation to a team using it successfully?
It can be very varied, to be honest with you. Is that initially when you first come on, of course, we need to connect to the back end. So the technical team, the smart people, you would essentially say, okay, sign on the dotted line. Our technical team will reach out to your IT team or whoever handles that and walk you through. They connect to your PMS. It takes a day or two to connect to that information. We sync it all through. And then from that, as soon as we're connected, depending on your availability, you get that call with me the minute we finish that connection. So you can have a call one day after you sign a contract, or you can, if I encourage you to say, okay, team, guess what? We're starting CareCru in August. We're going to have this meeting on August 7th. Again, typically 2 hours to get you live is what we call it, is that configuration call, training call. I never say we need to be live at this specific date. I said after that second call, we can go live as early as that next morning. Or if you want to say, let's start on a Tuesday. again, something as small as me, as I say, let's never start anything new on a Monday. The dental industry, you got 54 emails, you have 10 voicemails from the weekend of canceled appointments. Why throw that added stress on somebody to say, let's start something brand new where I need to do everything on a Monday morning? So it's literally behind the scenes, your front end team would only require 1 to 2 hours at most to get up and running. And then again, depending on that level, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's, you got some of these people who are pretty smart with some things that they go in and poke around. So, and the beauty of it as well is in between those two calls, typically we'll do it, have a call, 1 day off, have another call. In between, you have access in a sandbox environment with your data, with nothing turned on, where you can go in and poke around. You can actually go in and click on things and see what everything does before you even turn it on, to be able to, again, just get used to that and that comfort level to get over that initial fear of, oh my God, there's going to be 100 messages that go out tomorrow. There's just a text message that says, hey, Marc, your appointment's at 2. If your appointment's at 2, it's going to be at 2 when you send the message or not. So
that's right.
No, it can be very quick, especially for like a single location. If you have multi locations with practices, again, one of those things where we'll stagger that to say, you know what, we'll get 3 live this month, 4 the next month. So it's all based on your guys' preference, is that it can be as much or as little as they need to get up and running. Some people just like to plug and play, and some people want handheld, and that's totally fine.
Finally, let's finish this on a real positive note. Give me a like a success story that you're super proud of. A team that was onboarded, and now they're seeing the growth firsthand. Obviously, they can see this with the data set they get. Let's hear a feel good story, Matt.
We have a recent one of a new clinic who was hesitant, multi-location clinic who was looking to onboard very slowly, feature by feature, one clinic onto the second clinic, and again was sort of not pushed to me, but told to me, say, let's handheld these guys a lot. So what we did with this practice is that we simply started them with our online scheduling feature. So we went through the configuration, the training, no other feature. They did not have any automation going to patients. All they had was a link on their website and also a link that they could use to share to patients if they wanted to. Within the first 10 days, they had over 35 new patients booked in their schedule who all requested appointments online without needing to ever contact these patients individually. It was one of those things where it was supposed to be slow. Within 10 days, they had already rolled into the entire full platform. We launched them to where the second location has already launched half of their features with analytics and some other things within the span of 10 days after the first one was even supposed to think about starting. So to see how you can literally propel a practice to 35 new patients without doing anything. The team literally just had to hit a button that hit accept. That was one of my big ones recently that I was like, wow, like look at what this can do. Because not everybody just goes to a dental website to say, hey, I can book online. So the fact that you can interact somehow to be able to draw that in with helps of people like yourself or other teams that can draw attention to this outside of just the normal channels. So that's amazing. Or I had one 3 or 4 months ago, again, had never used automation. Big practice, 100 to 125 patients a day, calling every single one, like a very strict workflow. Did not trust that we could do what it was taught to do. And this is just reminders. Some people get super complex where they want detailed stuff, but that's the fun stuff too. But this one, when we turned that on and I said, what if only 5 patients confirm via the automation? What if only 5 of the 125? That's 5 less calls, 5 less things you need to worry about. And that first day, all but 3 patients had confirmed 24 hours before their appointment. And they were just blown away where
nice.
I got a message saying like, Matt, like almost thinking something was wrong. As if like, why did this work? It's like magic. So that was really cool when someone, like I said, when someone has nothing, but I know that's where I came from, that I had a flip phone, or when that first patient called, I had no idea what to do. Is that when you can help those people, that's amazing. Or when you have someone come into an escalation call, or like they'll go through regular support channels and they come to me, and then all of a sudden they come in guns blazing. It's like, this is not working. And then you fix that and it makes it work, but they recognize that. When someone is humble, and sometimes I do something that doesn't work, of course, but when someone takes the time to also realize that, you know what, I came into this with the wrong mindset. We misunderstood it or something. So I've had a couple of those recently. That's what makes me feel good. There's always going to be fires, but when someone is humble enough to say, okay, you know what, we shouldn't have acted this way, because it happens. It's the dental industry.
Yeah.
When a patient's mad, the front end staff is mad, the doctor hears about it, I get a call from the doctor. Like, CareCru's not working. It's like, okay, maybe it wasn't. It's like, let me check that first. And then when you find out it wasn't, and then you have those people, because I've been in that scenario. So I really appreciate those moments. So so massive, really instant success. I love to see that again with that online booking stuff. Like, that was really cool to see without even implementing anything else, especially when there was the hesitancy. But again, those practices who need the help and they see that it works is like, those are the biggest one for me. It's like, that's huge.
That's cool. And that's, I mean, this is what we get excited about, right? That's why we kind of try and jump into the conversations too quickly and maybe not listen, right? Because we know what the power of these things can wield within a practice. And we know that there's a major issue out there with staff, and we're looking at systems out there now that can alleviate a lot of issues that reside in that practice. And not to mention, if I'm going to fly an airplane, I want to have my display. I want to know how high I am, what I need to do, if even in terms of talking about like marketing spend, right? Like having an eyeball with your marketing company and right away knowing like, hey, this isn't working. We need to change things. So being able to change things on the fly, there's so many positives that we can go into, but we can't until the team gets there, right? And that's where we go, put on the Enya music, relax, trust in the process, help them trust in the process. And eventually, it's a beautiful thing when everything's like working and you get those magical phone calls with like the old like, you don't do the I told you so, but you're like,
Trust me, there's something that you want to.
Yeah.
The as per my last email page.
You're like, I'm going to record this conversation now and replay it to you in 6 months when things are kicking ass.
Exactly.
Sure. Matt, we need to do this again. This is great. You should come and co-host this with me, man. That's.
I would love that. That would be great. Like I said, being exposed to the industry nationwide, or again, even for some of these things, that's opened my eyes to nerd out, as you said at the start, is that it is something that this industry just sucks people in, and it's frustrating as hell sometimes, but when you can actually come in and get in the front lines of things and help people out, it's at the end of the day, it's worth it. You like the chaos. You like to be able to do that. So to hear the different things that you guys are doing, again, areas that I wish I had this type of exposure 10 years ago, I would have some super practice right now, regardless of what time zone I was on. Yeah. But it's, no, definitely would love to.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, no, there's tons of great information out there. And I think, forums like this just make it easier to connect and collaborate. And it's a fun time right now. Everybody talks about like the face-to-face disappearing, but, I argue that, there's something additionally that's been added to industry, to, personal, that, we're maybe gonna admit to later on in life. But Matt, have yourself a great weekend, and we will chat with you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mark. Thanks so much.
Yeah, take care.